manage animals in a way. Animals are part of the natural world. They live in it, and they live in it in natural ecosystems and they function very well. It's the fact that we have taken them out of natural ecosystems. We've taken plants out of natural ecosystems. You can get organic lettuces from America. They are grown in 24,000 acre lots. 24,000 acres of lettuce. Can you imagine that? That's organic.
Round heaven.
Yeah.
We've got time for 2 more questions, so we'll get you first and then Leah, do a question after.
When I was a kid in Britain, we used to have a lot of what we call general farms, which actually didn't just have dairy, they'd have beef, they'd have cropping, they'd have grain, they'd have sheep, they'd have pigs and all the rest of it. And it seemed to me that there was a real value in that, apart from anything else. When one thing was down, if milk wasn't selling very well, hogs were, or grain was, or whatever. Do you think there's a value in going back to something more like that?
Well, that's what I think have to do. And it's been shown to be far more productive. They've done some studies, and even in China, there's some interesting studies in terms of organic. And you can question what's called organic in China because it's all sorts of things that happen at certification level. But they did these studies, and sure, the amount of rice produced off those lots was less than in the conventional one where they used the chemicals and all that. But the total food was much greater, as well as it would be a much more resilient system. And that's again with these statistics and damn statistics, in terms of what you're talking about with these things. Clearly, we have to go to a form of farming that mimics a natural ecosystem. Has all the layers in it, has all the layers of plants and has the layers of animals and birds and insects in a way that will function well and maintain its own health. That's why I come back to the point that it's a healthy system. And a lot of our early farms in New Zealand too had a whole lot of diversity in them like that, and people used to grow their own veggies and milk the cow and do everything else as well, as a smaller farm. And I think that's where we need to go back to. And also, coming back to what I said earlier, we can go back and do that in the cities. In fact, New Zealand cities in the 60s, when urbanisation started, actually for a short time were hugely productive of cities. We had forest gardens throughout our cities. As people went to the quarter-acre sections and planted trees and cabbages and ducks and whatever. And we've actually lost that. So it's only, a generation? But we had huge production of food in New Zealand cities.
One more question.
I'll try and make it quick. So some of the systems we have in place to support what we've got going now, say, like sequestering nitrogen out of the air, that the plants that do that take, I think the figure was a similar amount of energy as that smelter down south. And there's other similar kind of figures for all to sustain the agriculture we keep. What I'm wondering, with things like this, the forest gardens we had in the bigger plots, we had things like that. Are there any other models for even a range back kind of agriculture that we can use?
What do you have from that? Models or what?
Are there models to support an agriculture which are far more sustainable, even if the agriculture is far more reined back? Like getting these crucial ingredients for growing, nitrogen, phosphorus, these things. Is there a way to get these in a sustainable way, even on a lesser scale?
Well, the issue to me is that this is why I have quite interest in government. The issue is not technical answers to how to do it. There's plenty of technical answers. We know actually how to grow things a lot better. We know how to do them in very diverse systems. We know how to regenerate agricultural systems. We know how to rebuild soil carbon. Right? That knowledge is there. It's getting it into the system, and that's where the financial thing comes in, and that's where the bankers come in, and who's calling the tune, and who's actually making the farmer grow in that way, and not giving them any room to manoeuvre or grow in a different way. Or why are all you people specialised in sitting in bloody square boxes and offices and never growing any food? And that's a whole big wide cultural issue that actually constrains these things. But the answers are there. What we've got to do, to some extent, what I say, is just boot the system out of the road and just go out there and start to do these things, because that's the only way it's going to happen.
Can I just say with that model, if I take some work some of my colleagues done at Massey, just take an individual farm that's currently running 620 cows, you take 100 cows out of that and you make $100,000 more. You keep taking cows out of that system and you know, the peaked profit, and then it starts to drop down again, you're actually back to almost half the cows to get back to the same level of profit you were at twice as many cows. This is how distorted our system
And that's
is
because
become.
you're actually reducing your inputs.
Yeah, just
And the
because
external inputs, like the expensive ones like Permaculture, right?
And but so you say are farmers stupid? You know, why are they out that end? Because they're farming for capital gain. Because the capital gain comes from production per hectare. Well, plus everybody's trying to flog them something. So everyone they talk to is saying, buy some of this, buy some of that. You know, so there's that push to maximise production. So, you know, even within the system that we have, if we just went back to making profit rather than making, you know, excess productivity or production, then we would be back to a much healthier system. That's how weird it is, and that's the pressure of the banks and the finance companies.
So we're going to, sorry, we don't have time for more questions, but I'm sure these questions are going to overlap with what we're discussing later on tonight. So this is going to be really quick because I don't think anyone's going to prepared response. And we might throw it out to the audience as well. But plastic and food waste, what is the extent of these issues and what's currently being done to address them? Would anyone like to speak to it?
Okay, I don't know everything, but I know a little bit about food waste. So I'm based in the Hutt Valley, and shortly after we started our urban farm project at Ikuni, we did an audit of the amount of food, or we tried to do an audit because supermarkets are pretty cagey about what it is that they're throwing out these days. Yeah. And so we started filming and documenting, and pretty quickly realised that the amount of food that was being thrown out within the Hutt Valley alone would have been enough to be feeding all of our low-decile schools there. So we've got a really huge issue with food waste. We've got a really huge issue with obviously the packaging that comes with that. But when we look upon that, and I look at this whole issue through the context of hunger, deprivation and poverty, because that's very much the spectrum that I am working within, I can see that actually food scarcity is not an issue, that we don't have hungry children in New Zealand because there isn't enough food. We have hungry children because there's not enough sharing, and we have hungry children because there is no systems to enable the sharing of food in a way that doesn't transact with money. And so part of what we're doing within the Hutt Valley is kind of taking that kibosh model, and big ups to kibosh, what a brilliant organisation, but it's only tip of the iceberg in terms of dealing with the food waste there. So for me, it becomes a question of, we've got lots of hungry children, we've got lots of local food production, we've got lots of gluts, we've got lots of wastage in our supermarkets. Why are we not creating more depots or places in our communities that food can be dropped off? Why are we not enabling communities to meet their own needs? I feel incredibly concerned about the lack of skills that are within our deprived communities for them to be able to activate a response to their own needs of their families, but instead what I see is this great corporate machine that is feeding in solutions and really highly packaged, over-processed, and no local solution at all. Within the school that I work at, there are 5 different corporates feeding into those children, but yet there's no local funding for us to be able to activate our own solution, but we're doing it anyway. So yeah, I'm incredibly wary of the industry of poverty that has sprung up, and I feel deeply concerned about how none of that is a local food response for our children. And it is possible, but we've just got to chuck those corporates out that are feeding off the back of our most vulnerable in this country, I believe. That is something to do with packaging.
I don't know. I just know that Love Food, Hate Waste is a new movement that's happening nationwide. But they did a survey here in Wellington looking at the amount of wastage that people threw out, and they said the average household throws out about $650 worth of food a year, and that across the country it comes up about $8 million a year of food that is just thrown out. It's food that we buy and leave in the fridge, food that we just don't end up using. So it's a massive issue. That's huge amounts of food that come through all of these systems that then just get thrown out, and usually they just go straight into landfill.
Apparently it's up to about 40% of the that's mentioned.
Oh, and sorry, I should have disclosed this at the start, but some of the food that is being served has been reclaimed from waste. Just ask the guy serving if you want to know which. I should have said this at the start. So, do you want to go?
Not really, to be honest. I mean, I don't think you get anyone in this room that doesn't disagree plastic's a problem, right? It's a petrochemical product, and we know the issue with that. So, food waste being covered very well.
Anyone in the audience, anything to add to this?
One of the petitions that hit my inbox recently, and I can't remember who it came from, was looking at this idea of waste from supermarkets. And the petition was trying to get pressure for governments to actually regulate, so it is not legal for supermarkets to just biff out perfectly good food. They would be required to actually give it to something.
The legislation was recently passed in France to that effect.
I can't remember where it came from.
Anyone else?
Can I have another question? Of course. Like you've got product A and product B, both different brands, but essentially the same product inside. One product's made in a glass container, one's in a plastic container. You've got glass and plastic, but the one in the glass container's got palm oil. What is the which one
Do we have any responses?
The answer is neither.
I'll make a comment there. I mean, it's not easy. I mean, what we're faced with is quite there's so many things that tie together, and there's so many things we face. If you go into the supermarket, and my wife tells me off every so often, because I go and I read the packets all the time, and it's all like this, and she says, "Oh, I can make it quick mind up with it." You know, I mean, it's a really big issue to even find out, and they don't even put on your packages anyway. They're really important information. So you read this, and the whole information sort of wave comes over you, and you don't know whether it's right or wrong or not. So I think this is a real issue, and I don't really know how to get around it, but the whole issue of information and what's good information and what's a lot of misinformation, there's this huge amounts of misinformation going around the place, for sure. And so I think this is the supposed advantage of something like this and what you guys are doing, and trying to get sort of good information out and get people to think about it.
Can I just add to that? I think just one thing, one of my favourite sayings is look past the label, right? Every label is a sales pitch in the supermarkets. And when it says it's environmental, it's organic, like I saw a piece of toilet paper the other day and I was showing it to some kids. And it said organic and it was green, and actually I was naturally attracted to the bag because it was green. But it was based on some cane sugar byproduct in Hawaii, and you know the food, the energy miles that would have got it to here is unquestionably large. And I think that's one of the things is, one of the best things we can do as consumers, even if you can't grow your own produce in your own backyard, one of the best things we can do is be a conscious consumer and spend the time to actually investigate, research whatever you buy, right? And try and make sure that it satisfies your own ethics and principles.
One last question, do you have any?
Yeah. So, I was the prep chef at Wishbone. If you know what Wishbone is, I was in the main production kitchen. What we ended up throwing out in terms of bread, if you know what those bread crates in the supermarket is, has 10 loaves. We throw about at least 20 of those full of bread each week. We used to produce about 60,000 units, and we don't sell, we probably throw out about 6,000 units of food. That's including the packaging, that's including what we put in out each week. They do occasionally donate to the thing, but usually it's just, even if the sandwich is about 2 days past its expiry date, it just gets biffed. And sometimes you see, like, we have like fish thins, which is roughly like a 20-layer thin. Imagine that for rice or pasta just getting biffed because it's about 2 or 3 days past its date. We can't sell it.
Well, before we jump on to the next question, I might just ask, where are your dumpsters?
Well, I used to work there, and I'll